Changing the Sales Game on webtalkradio.net. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. I'm excited that you're here with us this week. Now, as you listen to the show, my guests and we get that sometimes that word sales can throw us into a tailspin. We don't know what skills to focus on to get better, right? To save time and money, and also to make more time and money in our life. Well, to help you on your journey of changing your sales game, in the show notes, you will find my communication style assessment. It's my gift to you. You will get 2 reports. One, spotlighting your natural superpowers as you communicate. So you understand how your message is landing with whoever you're communicating with, hopefully humans. And on the flip side, you'll get your lowest score will generate a report, which typically spotlights your blind spot, which means maybe your message is not being received by people who communicate 180 degrees differently than you. So I hope that gift helps you navigate changing your sales game. It just makes it a smidge easier. That's what I'm here for. Now, my motivational quote today is by the amazing Napoleon Hill. And he says, if you can't do great things, do small things in a great way. So, oh my God, I'm a dork, right? I am a big Napoleon Hill fan. Love all his quotes, love him, probably read all his books. The one I chosen for today's show is really no different. So for the past 40 years, I think I've lived both my personal and professional life working on or creating what I would call micro habits that I can learn, execute, master, build upon, and then rinse and repeat with the next skill I needed to grow to get me to the next level of success for me, for my business, for my life. Now, I found that building these small things upon each other is just when magic seems to happen organically. Developing expertise in anything is impossible without ongoing practice and effort. And it's kind of a simple concept, yet we forget to do it. So today, my amazing guest is Joel Stevenson. Joel is a general manager of direct brands at Vendasta, which acquired Yesware in 2022, where Joel was the CEO. Prior to Yesware, Joel built Wayfair's, this is so cool, Wayfair's B2B business from scratch to over 400 million in annual revenue. He also ran Wayfair's UK business and oversaw the FP&A functions at Wayfair, transitioned into a publicly traded company. Now, before Wayfair, Joel worked as a consultant at ZS Associates and spent the early part of his career in various sales roles. Now, Joel has an MBA from Yale School of Management and a BS in business administration from the University of Illinois. And this is adorable. His number one goal is to be number one in humor endorsements on LinkedIn. So welcome my good humored friend, Joel, to the show.
Yeah,
so Joel, thanks for being on.
hopefully I won't be too boring after that introduction.
Well, it's so, yeah, you really now, right? I want to see the humor, but it's so funny. I can honestly say I've never seen anyone say that on LinkedIn. So I love it. I love the energy behind it. I just think it's got a cool vibe. So really happy to have you on. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah. When did you get your start in sales, and how has your career path looked since? Because I sometimes think we get on this path and then it's like, wait, where did I turn? And we're here, right?
Yeah, for me, it really had just, I started in sales. That wasn't really my plan. My plan, in undergrad, I was a finance major for a while. And then this guy came in and talked, this guy, I think it was Mike Muni was the guy's name. He was the original founder of Act Software. If you've been around for a while, you probably remember Act. I was like the first personal, relationship manager, kind of organizer tool. And I saw him speak, and he sort of made this argument that, no matter what you do in business, you're a salesperson. And so a good idea is to learn sales early in your career. And so I thought, oh, that sounds pretty good. And so I ended up taking a job with GTE, which was a regional bell operating company. It was like when they split up AT&T, there were all these regional bells, and then GTE sort of got all the areas that weren't good enough for a regional bell. So I ended up in Tampa, Florida, with a bunch of accounts, and that was my first job. But the nice thing about GTE was they had a 6-month sales training program. So before you even got your territory, you spent 6 months classroom education, field ride-along, certifications, training, all this stuff. So that was a really great start to a selling career.
So tell us, what was the founding vision for Yesware when you started that?
Yeah, I personally am not the founder. I came in a little bit later, but when Matthew and Cashman, who were the co-founders of the company, originally started it, the general idea was that there wasn't software that was built for salespeople. There was software that salespeople used, like Salesforce, and there's the old saying about, like, the reason it's called Salesforce is just to force salespeople to use it, and that is a lot of the original idea of CRM. Like, I did a CRM implementation. I was part of a team that did it at GT a long, long time ago, Orem or something, one of the very early ones, and at the time it was really all about like control. About It was sort of like, well, what happens if the rep leaves with their Rolodex? Like, we want to have all that communication, we want to have that insight, we want to have understanding about what's going on in the forecast. It was always really a management tool. It was never really a tool for how can we make the reps the best they can be. Like, CRM typically was not part of that equation. It's got a little bit better over time, various iterations of it, but the idea of Yesware was like, well, let's build software that is first and foremost for the salesperson, and then sales managers may also get some benefit from that. But the idea was like, what would a salesperson need to make themselves more productive, more effective, and that's how it started.
It's so funny that you say that, because I remember when I worked in corporate, like the number of report. You have to remember, I started when there were no computers, too. By the way, yes, I'm that old, Joel. But here was the scary thing. At the end of the day, management, because I get, we have to track results. We have to measure, are we making revenue? Are we meeting goals? I get the point of it, and it's a necessary thing. But as a salesperson, right, my job is to go out and develop business and network and make phone calls and meet people. All of this takes time, and do some vetting before you go out, preparation, who is the client, right? So you show up prepared. All of that takes time. And then they wanted us to do 10 hours of reports. It's like, whoa, and then they gave you well, do it on your time. I'm already working 50, 60 hours a week. Now you want me to do this reporting? Like, what's in it for me, man? Yeah, you're measuring me. I understand that, but can we make this reporting a more simple process, because it's labor intensive? And by the way, that was, yes, when it was manual, right? We had to send up reports and what have you, type them up. But fast forward, when I started my business, Joel, it was hard to find a CRM that was simple and streamlined to do what I needed it to do, right? Which is keep in touch with my clients and track what that relationship looks like. But from a reporting standpoint, we put in all of these gyrations for what's the end use, right? So for the salespeople, I agree, we have to keep it simple. So I love the premise of Yesware, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's served a lot of reps over time, and and versus a very complicated, long CRM implementation, and they serve slightly different purposes. But normally people are up and running with Yesware in an hour and getting benefits. So that's how we try to keep it.
That's heaven for a salesperson, right? What are some of the key highlights, would you say, in the past 5 years at Yesware, right? I always like to look at the business growth as well. And what do those reiterations look like based on once they're in the market?
Yeah, there's been a few pieces of the journey. I mean, I think one key one that I look at is we have embedded Yesware deep inside the inbox, and so like part of one of our kind of guiding principles is to keep people in context, where context switching between one screen to another, one tab or one task to another can be difficult, especially generally the people that we serve the best are account executives or people that are in a selling orientation that are managing a whole bunch of different things. Like, you're not just doing outbound, you're not just doing customer, like you've got a bunch of different hats that you're sort of wearing. And so the ability to stay in context and have everything in your inbox ends up being a big benefit to some folks. And we had a Gmail version of the product for many, many years, and then we started coming out with an Outlook product for years. And Microsoft, when we first built our Outlook product, was not really ready for us, and it took 2 years at least of working pretty closely with some of their product team to actually get them to build the APIs that we need to build to make Yesware actually work properly. inside of Outlook. And I would say about a year ago, we finally cracked the code to where Yesware works pretty well inside of Outlook. And so as a result, we've been able to tap into a slightly different type of customer base. The early Yesware customers were pretty much all SaaS, software as a service software companies that had sales teams, and now we're starting to see many other types of companies. We just signed the biggest deal in Yesware history. I can't say who it is, but a very, very large Canadian bank is using it for their entire management division now. Like, part of that is because there are many companies and industries that rely on Outlook versus Gmail. Like a tech company, we sometimes get a little bit blinded to that. We're like, well, everybody's on Gmail, but actually, no, that's not true. Only 25% of businesses use Gmail or G Suite for their email communication. So that was a big one. Another one that comes to mind recently is we added the ability to enrich data right inside of Yesware. And so, like, for example, if you're doing a prospecting campaign and you're trying to reach, say, 50 VPs of sales in the Northeast that work in financial services, you can now use Yesware to go find that data and then add those people immediately into outbound campaigns. And so that's been an exciting part of the journey. And then getting acquired a year ago by Vendasta was certainly a big milestone.
It's so funny. And that was 5 years. Like, that's a lot, right? Change is change is change. And we have to be able to, unlearn, relearn, relearn, if you will, because everything stays the same and nothing stays the same, if you know what I mean. So, wow, that is just brilliant the way it kind of evolved, right? And then working with product teams to create it for the Outlook venue and all of those things. Just really, really cool stuff. Love to hear those stories because it means that we're growing and learning and evolving, which I think as a business, we constantly need to evolve. Easier said than done, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But that's just really, really cool stuff. Now, I know you have a podcast, The Hard Sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
What sparked the beginning of the podcast? I'm curious, as a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we were trying to find different ways to get the Yesware story out there. Like, generally, the way that we've done it is we've tried to build sales content that is useful to people, that doesn't, it isn't like strictly about us. It's just more about, general topics that people want to know about. And then hopefully people get to know us a little bit. And then, if they decide they want to try a trial of Yesware, they can do that. But what, our objective is mostly to talk about sales related topics. And so we've got, a decade worth of content on our website that's all ungated. You can just go to yesware.com/blog and check that out. But the hard sell was trying to get into a slightly different medium and talk about some different aspects of selling. And yeah, I also find it interesting myself, and so it's like it's just like, whether or not anybody ever listens to it, it's interesting to me because I get interesting people to talk to, and and I could sort of nerd out about sales or sales technology, for hours on end. So I just personally find it kind of fun and interesting, and yeah, it's been a good source where we can reach a little bit of a different audience, and you can explore topics in a different way than the way that you can explore them, just strictly with, kind of traditional, web content marketing.
I love podcasting. I've been doing it for 12 years. This show, another show I have, Enlightenment of Change, for 12 years. This show I've been doing for 3. And I'll just share something really cool that just happened. So I just found out that both my shows are in the top 5% of all podcasts on the business platform. There's like over 3 million podcasts or something.
Incredible.
So wasn't that so cool? Both of my shows. So somebody had shared, hey, did you go too? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking. Isn't this sad? We don't know blind spots, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, 5%. So of course I'm going to send out a thank you email to everybody that listens, because I would never have achieved that without the listeners. The second cool thing that happened, I had work done in my bathroom. We had leakage with the tiles, met this guy, was referred to me. He referred me to his wife, who was on my other show, Enlightenment of Change. We posted it last week, Joel. Thursday, she texted me, you're never going to believe it, I got business from it.
Oh,
made
awesome.
my soul sing, my heart sing. I was like, yes. this is what the show is about, for me to be able, just like you said, to spotlight business owners like yourself, CEOs that can help salespeople. But at the same time, if people listen, right, listening and seeing us, because if they watch us on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, it builds that know, like, trust factor a lot faster. So the podcast, I think, has a totally different energy and a delivery for people to absorb the content in a more fun, lighthearted way, but also walking away with, in 30 minutes, man, I got some action steps that I can take and put into practice, or an action step of, let me explore that. I think that's maybe what my career or business might need. So I love doing the show because the ripple effect of the show itself is just magical to me, right? And that's what we're here for. That's what we're spending the time doing these things, because we want to make a difference. And then hopefully that comes back to us, 100% tenfold or whatever, because we're giving so much great content and energy and vibe and all those things out there. So I love it. And the other cool thing is, and that's why you're going to share later on how people can join free for initially for as long as they want, and then they can upgrade if their business allows down the road. But I love also being able to bring these free gifts to the listeners, because it gives them a chance to try us out before they decide to buy. So again, it builds that know, like, trust factor for others to get to know us so much faster. So it's just such a cool tool for us, but for getting in front of people that need us too, and at a no price point, right? They can listen to the show for free. So I
Yeah.
love podcasting. Can you see I'm a dork?
Yeah.
I hope you become as dorky as me about it.
Yeah, I'm a little behind as far as the tenure and number of shows, so I got a lot of work to do to catch up to you, but I'll try.
And that, listen, you got to start somewhere, right? A year from
Right.
now, you'll have how many shows? So I'm curious, that was my experience with podcasting. Have you seen value from the podcasting?
Yeah, we have. I think I'm always. I mean, I guess I just sort of assume that nobody listens to it. Is kind of a default because we're still pretty new. I think we've done maybe, we might be up to 30 episodes or something at this point. But every now and then somebody's like, "Oh, I listened to the pod and I heard something about it," or I had one guest on where I think we ended up having a pretty good interview where he was able to explain what he was doing pretty well, and he uses that, I think, to send to people to say, like, "Oh, just listen to this, listen to this part of the interview, and you'll understand a little bit better about kind of what we're doing." So I think that's been helpful. We had a candidate come through our hiring pipeline for a sales management role recently, and he was like, "Oh man, I love your podcast. Like, it's so good." And like, he was probably just sucking up. I don't know, maybe not, but anyway, it's like it's nice. Just by simply that act of listening, one, it's like it's a little bit of a tell that the person did some research, into the company, and two, it's an opportunity to get to know us or get to know me a little bit and like how we think about stuff, before anybody even shows up through the door. And so, you maybe, either can maybe have a better discussion when you actually get in person with somebody, or you maybe realize that actually, like, Joel's full of shit and all the stuff that he says is wrong. And so, like, I don't even want to waste his time with an interview. So,
Well, that's not the case though, because you're brilliant.
yeah.
It's so funny. I remember I did an online class, like a webinar, and then at the end I have my offer for my program. And so several people signed up. I didn't know who they were. Like, they weren't referred to me. They were just on the webinar, and then they bought my program. So when I met with them, of course, I do a one-on-one onboarding, getting to know what is their objectives, because I really want to customize, even though it's a program, I want to customize it to make an impact. And this one time, like 7 out of 7, they were like, "Oh, I've been following your podcast. I saw you speak during COVID on some whatever networking. And then I followed your podcast. And then when you did the webinar, I was like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me," because they
Hmm.
knew me because of my,
Hmm.
like, because I am who I am, right? On the podcast, when I'm web, whatever it is, I show up as me.
Yeah.
And it enticed them to purchase. So like I was like, really? Like, you listen to the show? Who knew that, but people are listening out there. So it's just
Hmm.
really this cool, this subtle exchange of energy that we don't even know it's there, but we're getting good mojo from it, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I
It's
find
cool.
the versus some other, like some of the web analytics and other stuff that you can get that ends up being like pretty detailed. I find, and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but I find sometimes the podcast reporting is a little bit more opaque where you can sort of see, you know, you can kind of see roughly where you stack up, how many reviews you got, things like that. But you don't really like, there's no audience report of like, oh, here are all the people that, you know, actually listened, kind of a thing. So
Yeah, and I use Libsyn as my platform. So on the back end, I do get analytics of how many downloads. My show averages between 800 and 1,000 downloads per episode, which apparently is pretty good. Again, I guess
yeah,
that's why I'm in the top. Yeah, isn't that neat? So
yeah,
again, there's some analytics out there, but you have to just, like anything else, it's a piece of the puzzle. You always want to make sure that we're doing better, and the numbers are just one aspect of that, like sales, right? I
yeah.
can't manage a number if I'm coaching you, but the numbers tell a story that I can then leverage to help you change behavior, right? Behaviors change the results, right? The numbers at the back end. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all useful. We just have to be strategic in how we use it, because it's time and money to do these things,
Hmm.
right? So we just want to make
Yep.
sure we're being mindful of that. What are some, I'm just always curious, because
Yep.
you're more on the tech side, right? I'm more on the soft skills, teaching the sales. What are
Hmm.
some of the trends that you're seeing in sales right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time because you've got, I mean, especially on the technology side, you have kind of a, you know, you could argue a shrinking pool of buyers because funding and interest rates going up. Like they're, you know, especially the tech market is, you know, is having a little bit of a readjustment here. So, you know, you probably don't necessarily have a growing purchasing budget out there in the world generally, but then you have the rise of a lot of technologies, including AI, that's making it easier and easier than ever to send out a lot of volume of messages. And so, like, what I'm seeing is that in general, it is getting much more difficult to get in touch with somebody, just because you know, we sort of, you know, in some ways as a sales profession recently, you know, maybe through the part of bad actors or whatever, like we've sort of worn out the buyers, I think, to some extent. And, you know, I think about when I first started in sales, and this may be similar to you know, to some of your experience, but you know, I remember like I'm reading an entire book about like how to reach somebody with a cold call, and it's like, oh, you know, start calling them at 5:30 in the morning and wait till their voicemail changes, and then you know they show up at 7, and then you call them right at 7, and you, oh, if you get the receptionist, here's a pattern that you do, like all this stuff to, you know, we would do those things and we'd have some success with it if we put in the time and did it right, consistently. But you know, now it's a little bit different where you know, if I call, you know, you may not have an office phone anymore, and so I get your cell phone number, I call your cell phone number, and maybe you talk to me or maybe you don't. But a lot of times, what ends up happening is like you might talk to Google Assistant and you might say something, and then you know, I look at the text thing and I'm like, well, this person is obviously given this no thought. I might mark you as spam, and if I mark you as spam now, every future phone call that you make is gonna be maybe a little bit more difficult, and that can very quickly add up to where it become, you know, now as soon as you call me, it's scam likely, and now you got to replace your phone number and all this sort of stuff. And you know, same thing happens on the email side where you know you can sort of burn out your reputation, or burn out your ability to get in front of people if you just sort of spew nonsense into the world at a very high volume. And you know, unfortunately, that's the approach that a lot of people choose to take. And so what I'm seeing is those tactics are increasingly hitting diminishing returns, and the way that people are getting through to people is still using technology to save time, but using the time saved by technology to try to get more live introductions to people, or to try to like respond very thoughtfully to somebody's LinkedIn post, or to take the time to write a really good email that was obviously not written by a machine, to get somebody's attention. It's like you try to use those things, you know, and if you get in front of somebody now, I think, you know, stakes are a little bit higher. And then hopefully what you do is you don't have any unforced errors in those precious buyer conversations, or buyer journeys that you're working somebody through. And so that's part of what we're seeing. And I think there are, you know, there are very good uses for tools like GPT to improve writing, or to maybe fill out some parts that aren't as good, or to, you know, maybe to rework a value prop or all that sort of stuff. But they're tools that should be used in conjunction with a good sales process. They are not a replacement for the sales process. I think like people haven't totally, not everybody's totally figured that out yet.
And it's so funny because, this is what I tell people with the chat GBT. I use it more for the research piece of things, just because
Mhm.
it scours, right, the internet. So I could put it in as very specific and it comes up with some information for me. I personally don't use it to write. And I'm not the best writer, Joel, don't get me wrong, but I feel this is my take on the chat GBT. Like you, I think it has its place. So chat GBT, let's say, is kind of in the middle of not great, not bad, right? It's kind of in the middle. So anybody who's starting out, maybe not really sure, chat GBT, I think, can raise you up to that middle level because you don't know what you don't know. My
Mhm.
fear is, though, you have someone like us where we're skilled and we know what to do. We start using chat GBT, but our expertise is high. That chat GBT is going to pull the quality of what it writes or does down. So it diminishes the impact of how you want to show up. So I think we have to use it sparingly. The other thing you said that I want to comment on, I do think technology is important and I think we need to lean into it. Now I'm older, right? I'm an older entrepreneur, business owner for 22 years. So I've seen the gamut of the growth in the technology world from a business usage. So like I use Meet, I think it's called Meet Egger. My assistant uses it. So
Mhm.
we set posts up in advance based on like we're recording the show. That will go and then it's done. It's off our to-do list. And then we just make sure we redundancy, right? We still have to inspect what we expect for the technology to do, but it has created so much more time that we can work on other projects and I can make more programs or I could do more videos or I can network more effectively. So you're 100% right. The AI is a beautiful thing if used properly. And really, we have to lean, I think, into the technology from freeing our time up so we could do what we're good at. And then the third thing I want to say is my fear is always that write me a script to get on the phone, like you were saying with the I personally have never believed in cold calling, and after 5 years of doing cold calling early in my career, 35 years, I don't cold call, right? It's all through
Mhm.
developing relationships, referrals, all those pieces of the puzzle, people getting to know me, like my story before.
Yeah.
But my fear with the technology, when you have people write scripts and stuff, you have one shot to impress that client and you're showing up with that. So
Mhm.
that to me, I think is really dangerous, especially new people getting into sales. There's a better way to do it. And that's not where I would start. Business and sales, it's personal. You want to do transactional? Yeah, then use the chat GBT to write your scripts. You want to build relationship and play the long game? It's personal, man. And you have
Mhm.
to hone those soft skills to be able to connect with the other humans, right? That need our services or products or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think there's probably never been a time when the sort of the opt-in form or referral or whatever you want to call it is worked has worked, is increasingly better than the massive cold, kind of versions of things. And the sometimes what I because Yesware can sort of be used for evil or good, and we sometimes have customers that that end up more on the spammy side of things. And what we try to explain to people is that let's say you send an email campaign out to 3,000 people, and maybe it didn't take you that much time. Maybe you get one person that responds, so you're like, oh, great, like didn't take me that much time, and I got one response. Well, that's a positive metric that you can see, but what you can't see are all the negative metrics. So maybe a bunch of people marked you as spam. Maybe a bunch of people are like, this person is a joker, or this company is stupid, or whatever it ends up being. And so you might hurt your future ability to sell. And you could easily, if you're in a sales territory, you could easily burn out a territory, and you would never know it, right? Because no one's going to take the time to write you to say like you're a moronic spammer. Sometimes people do, but it's increasingly rare, I'd say. So and then the next person shows up and has a sales story sales story that's like pretty well burned out. You burned out your company's reputation. Then you got to kind of start from ground zero. So you gotta be. These tools are very powerful, and you can use them to your benefit or to your detriment. And it's not always obvious right away that you're hurting yourself.
It's so funny when COVID hit, right? I had done everything live. I didn't have an email list, right? Like I
Mhm.
emailed people that I knew, right? That I was working with, I was networking with. That's how I emailed them or LinkedIn or whatever it was. Um, and I remember when I started building my email list and corresponding with them to see if I could generate, this digital business in this digital realm. And so we started monitoring how many people were unsubscribing. It didn't make me feel bad, but I wanted to make sure, what is the lot, exactly what you just said. What's the logic behind that unsubscribe? Is it somebody I knew? And like, I would get notes like, Connie, I can't believe I'm on 3 of your lists. Okay. Then I said to my marketing person, we have to go in and scrub, because they should not be getting 3 emails from me. So if you use the data in a positive way to refine, and then the other thing is you're sending emails, giveaways, whatever I'm part of, all of a sudden I'm getting all these unsubscribes. It was just too much. It was just too many emails. So then you have to scale back. So again, I've never been reported as spam. I think maybe once. It was probably a mistake. I don't get a ton of unsubscribes, but when I do, I look at the numbers. Why? How much mailing did we do? Did I burn them out? Was I becoming a jerk? I don't ever want to become a jerk. I want to remain relevant. So I think if we use that information again to build real relationships, right? I'm all about the real relationship. I think they're useful tools if used appropriately. It's like anything else, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Just last question. What tip or idea do you think helps people become successful in sales today? What would be that one little tip that you would give?
I think it's, sales in many ways is about effective follow-up.
Hmm.
And if you could do one thing, if you could control one thing, I think if you just control effective follow-up, and to the extent of here's a stat from Yesware. It's kind of interesting. If you don't get an email response within an hour from an email that you send, there's about a 1 in 20 chance that someone's going to respond to you ultimately over time. And on average, it takes to get somebody, on average, to get somebody to reply to an email. It could take 5 to 6. Now, if you have a good relationship with somebody, it's not going to take that. But some of you are just getting to know. You should expect that you're going to have to contact them probably 5 to 6 times before you get in touch with them. And so, being able to manage that follow up, from an initial communications perspective, but then, just through the whole process, I sometimes like to think of it as like forced versus unforced errors in tennis. Whereas, like, if somebody blasts a serve at you and you miss it, well, that's a forced error. It was a really hard serve. But if you get a softball and you just smack it, right into the net, that's your fault for doing that. And you see, salespeople, missing these precious leads because they don't follow up, appropriately or timely or enough or too much. It could also be a problem. And without the appropriate information. So, adding value with every exchange is a really important part of effective follow-up. And I think, if you could just get yourself into a position where you're not losing deals for just because your sort of the technicals were wrong, if you will. It's one thing if you lose a deal because maybe your product wasn't the right thing, or the buyer lost their budget. There's a lot of fine reasons to lose deals, but because you got too busy and you forgot to follow up with this person because this other deal was really hot and you just let it, that's tough. And I think in times like this, when the market tightens up a little bit and interest rates are high and people are a little bit more cautious, like you just can't afford to lose a deal because of inappropriate follow-up.
Yeah, I think it's some statistics, Joel. It's like 98% of salespeople stop after the 4th or 5th touch. And that could be an email, a web, if they listen to the show. So it doesn't always have to be a phone call or an email direct. Yeah. We need now, because of social media and because the amount of information that's thrown at us every day, whether we realize it or not, we're like over sensory. It's exponential now. The reality is we need to reach out and touch people 13 to 18 times. So not 2% of salespeople do the 13 to 18 times. And oh, by the way, they're the ones going to the bank with bank, with money. So right. Follow up is such a key piece of the process, right? Of that sales process. And the other thing you said, I think, is important. You have to have a process. find, like I have my 7 steps. I've used it for 40 years and it's rinse and repeatable because it works, right? So what is your sales process? I think you have to define that, get really good at all the sub skills under whatever those topics are, right? Like follow up. You got to get really good at those behaviors and those habits and put systems in place that you can easily follow up. That's just one step. So if we could get good at all the sub skills, now you're humming along. And no matter whether we have slow economic times, booming economic times, you're in the game because you have a nice full pipeline and you have all those habits on rinse and repeat. You might feel a little pinch, but overall, you're not going to, see the real high peaks and valleys that we often see in sales. So yeah, follow up, man. That's great tip. To me, that's like the linchpin that keeps the rest of the wheel moving forward. So thank you for that. Great. I agree 100%. Before we go, I want to give your information. So I hope you were inspired by today's discussion. Joel clearly is brilliant at what he does. And, he's pretty funny too, by the way. So if you'd like to reach, yeah. Hey, listen, he just got off a flight at 2 a.m. So he was on today. I
Would have been
appreciate
better if not for that.
flying. It's not fun, right? Reach out to Joel if you have a question. It's jstevenson@yesware.com. I will put that in the show notes. If you want to check out the website, please do. Also, it's yesware.com. And there's that free, tell them about the free link that they could start to play with Yesware, absolutely no cost, and a free version. Can you share that, please?
Yeah, if you just go to the homepage, you can start a free trial of Yesware, and it'll just ask you whether you're on Gmail or whether you're on Outlook, and you can install right from there, and you can get up and running in a few minutes, and you get a 28-day trial for free that's fully loaded. And then if you decide you just want to go back down to the free tier, we have a free forever tier that gets you basics like some email tracking and appointment setting capabilities. And we hope you find it helpful.
That's so awesome, because I have to tell you, you have to have some kind of CRM, something. And even if it's simple at first, because then sometimes we grow into it and then they can upgrade, right? As the need arises. So check out yesware.com, and that free membership link. I will put the free, and then they can decide later on. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. So easy peasy for you guys to find Joel and to find that specific usage. Joel, I have to tell you, thank you so much. Technology is still tough for me. It's an age thing, I know, but I really embrace it because I see the value of all these things that are being created in this virtual realm, and with technology and chat GBTs and the AIs and everything. I agree with you. We have to be cautious. And I think use it from an analytics perspective, because that information really propels us to see what effort is creating, right, the return on my time and the return on my investment. So thank you so much. This was mind-blowing for me. And I am going to download the yesware.com, kids. So join me and come and play with Joel and I on that platform as well. Joel, thank you again. And truly thank you for showing up. I know you have to be exhausted after your flight. It's appreciated that you came and brought your A game. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was nice being here, and yeah, I'll probably take a nap now.
You do that. I think you've earned it. And I want to thank you all for joining me weekly as we question, build, and discover together, no matter where you are on changing your sales game. I truly hope my guests and I inspire you to take some action, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's downloading the free version of Yesware, or reaching out to Joel if you have a question specific to something you're trying to achieve. Again, he's got a great background, plus he has the technology piece. So please reach out to him, pick his brain. That's what he's here for, right, Joel?
Yep.
And thanks again for being on. You've been listening to Changing the Sales Game with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.com. I truly am inspired that you join me weekly with my guests on the show. And I hope that you take this information, ideas, software in this case, apply it in your real life, your real business. And I promise you, with action comes reaction, which comes magic. And I want everybody to have magic in their life and business. Thanks again for tuning in. I will see you all next week. I love you so much. Have a great week, everybody.